Munich, Germany, June 18th, 2020. It is a Thursday. Jan Marsalek has just been fired. In 4 hours, he will be gone. Not fired and disgraced, not fired and arrested, not fired and hiding in a basement. Gone. Completely. As if he never existed. Before we get to that, there is something you need to know about Jan Marsalek. 2 years before he disappeared, he sat down at a dinner table in London with a group of financial traders. He wanted to impress them. So he pulled out a document. The document contained the chemical formula for Novichok, the nerve agent that Russia had used to poison a former spy on a park bench in England just months earlier. He had obtained the classified formula from a senior government official. He showed it to bankers, at dinner, to seem interesting. That is the kind of man Jan Marsalek was. And that is why, when everything fell apart, nobody could stop him. Jan Marsalek was born in Vienna in 1980. On his 20th birthday, the same day he dropped out of school, he walked into a small startup called Wirecard and asked for a job. He had no qualifications, no degree, no plan. They gave him the job anyway. He was the kind of person who made you want to give him things. Trilingual, inexhaustible, charming in a way that was almost architectural. He built trust in people the way other men built spreadsheets, deliberately, precisely, one brick at a time. For you, he would tell anyone who asked for a minute of his time, always. He said that to almost everyone. By 2010, he was the chief operating officer of Wirecard, a company that had grown from a startup into one of the most celebrated fintech companies in Europe, valued at over 24 billion euros, more than Deutsche Bank. The German government promoted Wirecard to the Chinese premier during a state visit. Angela Merkel mentioned it in Beijing. Jan Marsalek ran the fastest growing part of the business. He ran something else too. Something that started in 2014, when a Russian intelligence operative named Stanislav Petlinsky made him an offer. Before we go further, every week on Folded, we find the story that nobody is telling and tell it the way it deserves to be told. If this is your first time here, subscribe now. You are going to want to see what comes next. For 6 years, while running the COO operations of a company worth more than Deutsche Bank, Jan Marsalek worked simultaneously as a Russian intelligence asset. He used Wirecard's global payment infrastructure to move money for Russian covert operations. He provided logistical support to the Wagner Group, Russia's private mercenary army, in Libya and in Syria. He traveled to active war zones as a guest of the Russian military. He boasted to London traders that he had been on the helicopter gunships in Syria after Wagner retook Palmyra from Islamic State fighters. He made more than 60 trips to Russia using 6 different Austrian passports. He kept a 50,000 euro per month apartment in Munich, directly opposite the Russian consulate. And in 2018, at that London dinner table, he pulled out the Novichok document. The same nerve agent that had killed a British woman named Dawn Sturgis, who had found a discarded perfume bottle in a park in Amesbury and sprayed it on her wrists, not knowing it was the deadliest nerve agent ever manufactured. Dawn Sturgis was 44 years old. Jan Marsalek used her death as a conversation starter at a business dinner. He was that comfortable. He was that untouchable. While all of this was happening, Wirecard was not what it appeared to be. The Asian operations that Marsalek ran, the operations that justified the 24 billion euro valuation, the operations that produced the most impressive numbers, were largely fictional. The partner companies in Asia did not exist in any meaningful way. The escrow accounts holding 1.9 billion euros in cash, accounts that auditors had been trying to verify for years, accounts that Marsalek had personally guaranteed, did not contain 1.9 billion euros. The money was not there. It had never been there. In 2019, the Financial Times began publishing investigations. Marsalek personally coordinated with Austrian intelligence contacts to surveil the FT journalists, track their sources, and intimidate whistleblowers. The German financial regulator BaFin, rather than investigating Wirecard, opened a case against the FT journalists for market manipulation. Wirecard sued the press, denied everything, kept going. Meanwhile, a retired teacher named Michael Hausman had put his entire pension into Wirecard shares. He had read the analyst reports. He had seen the government endorsements. He had watched the stock rise for years. When Wirecard collapsed, he lost everything. He was one of thousands. By early 2020, the auditors at EY could no longer sign off on the accounts. The 1.9 billion euros was not there. It had never been there. The game was over. On June 18th, 2020, Marsalek was suspended. He had 4 hours. Step 1, misdirection. He booked a commercial flight to the Philippines. He paid Filipino immigration officials to log him as having arrived in Manila on June 19th, creating a false digital trail for every investigator who would come looking. He did not go to the Philippines. Step 2, the exit. He drove to a small private airfield in Bad Voslau, Austria. A private Cessna was waiting, chartered by his Austrian intelligence contacts. The jet flew him north to Minsk, Belarus. Russian FSB agents met him at the airport. They drove him to Moscow. Step 3, the new identity. Russian intelligence gave him a passport in the name of a Russian Orthodox priest. The escape from the most significant corporate fraud in German post-war history took less time than a transatlantic flight. Interpol issued a red notice. Germany's BKA launched a manhunt. Austrian authorities issued arrest warrants. Every EU intelligence agency was looking. John Marsalek was already home, already comfortable, already planning what came next. Most fugitives hide. John Marsalek did not hide. From Moscow, he built one of the most active Russian espionage networks in Western Europe. He recruited a Bulgarian national named Orlan Rusev to run a spy cell in the United Kingdom. The cell surveilled journalists, tracked Russian dissidents, gathered intelligence on critics of the Kremlin. In their messages, tens of thousands of them, later recovered by British police, Marsalek and Rusev planned in detail. Their primary target was Christel Grozev, an investigative journalist at Bellingcat who had spent years exposing Russian intelligence operations, including the Salisbury poisoning. Rusev told Marsalek he had the resources in Bulgaria to kidnap Grozev, drug him, lock him in a cave, begin an extraction process. Marsalek responded with operational suggestions. He made jokes about Novichok. He referenced the GRU directly. He operated as though no one was listening, because for years, no one had been able to do anything about it anyway. In February 2023, British police arrested Orlan Rusev in a guest house in Great Yarmouth. They found the messages. They found the surveillance equipment. They found false Belgian, Bulgarian, and French passports bearing Marsalek's photograph. Rusev pleaded guilty to spying for Russia. Jan Marsalek was nowhere to be found. Marcus Braun, Wirecard's CEO, the man in the black turtleneck who modeled himself on Steve Jobs, is on trial in Munich. He has been on trial since 2022. Jan Marsalek's German lawyers showed up at the Munich court with a letter. The letter was from Marsalek. It expressed support for his former colleagues. It was the first time he had communicated publicly since his disappearance. He did not apologize. He did not explain. He did not turn himself in. The Interpol red notice remains active. Germany wants him. Austria wants him. Britain wants him. Investigators in 5 countries are still looking for Jan Marsalek. He is believed to be in Moscow. He is believed to be comfortable. Jan Marsalek walked into Wirecard on his 20th birthday with nothing. No qualifications, no plan. 20 years later, he had run a 24 billion euro company, directed a Russian spy network across Europe, shown the Novichok formula to London bankers at a dinner party, and escaped Germany using an FSB-arranged private jet in the 4 hours between being fired and the arrest warrant being issued. Every investor who trusted Wirecard lost their money. Every employee who worked there lost their job. Every journalist who tried to expose it was surveilled, threatened, and sued. Dawn Sturgis died from nerve agent that Russian intelligence had smuggled into England. Jan Marsalek made jokes about it over dinner. He sits in Moscow now, drinking his coffee. Interpol's most wanted. Entirely free. Completely untouchable. Every week on Folded, we find the story that nobody is telling and tell it the way it deserves to be told. If you are not subscribed yet, now is a good time.